was doing right before I got on the air tonight, which was
what was that?
I was watching Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh no! How far are you?
Episode 3.
Okay. What are your thoughts? You finished episode 3?
Yes, I just now.
Okay, so you've seen the first confrontation,
if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
That's a bad show. So by the time this is out, that 6th and I guess final episode will be out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm watching it with my wife and we're just sitting there like, this is not a good show. Like both of us are like, this isn't good.
How knowledgeable is she about Star Wars?
I kind of have to fill in some gaps now and then, but mostly it's like we've got it. Like, that recap did a fair amount of stuff. And then I just sort of, for some reason, I just found myself explaining stuff and I was like, why do I know this? And then I was mad at myself that I knew stuff.
You're a regular Wikipedia.
I know. Stop it. Don't say that.
Voodoo hide. Anybody who watches Red Letter Media will understand that reference.
I'm just sitting there and it's just like, okay, so we just got the part where it's like, yeah, take her to Alderaan, like go through the tunnel. I'll distract them. And like, so it's like, okay, so you're just going to get off your mission then. It's like, okay.
Yeah,
whatever.
apparently.
And then like a second later, like the little girl's like, but you should help him. I can make it on my own because Leia's so fierce. And then like the adult with her says, you're right, child. I'll just go to the end of the tunnel, take a left and meet up with the pilot.
Right.
By the way, if this was a real operation, the pilot would be like, hey, where's my friend? Where's my friend? Like, what happened to my friend?
Correct.
Did you do something to my friend? Like, He'd be like, if I were the pilot, I'd be like, I'm not going anywhere without my contact. Where is she?
Correct.
I don't know you, child. I don't trust you.
Right.
But this woman's like, you're right, little girl. I'm going to go. Just head down the tunnel. It's like, you just promised this person who you, by the way, you just kind of met like a few minutes ago.
Yep.
A few minutes before that, you met him. And then you're like, yes, I promised you I'll take her. And then like 5 minutes later, you're like, but the little girl told me to go back and save you. And then you got 2 people somehow getting in and out of tunnels that I thought only had one in and out. And then we're just like, she pops up. It's like, how'd she get through the thing? And then it's like, are you the one I'm meeting? It's like, no, he couldn't make it. It's like, how did she get to the end of the tunnel?
Correct.
And then she didn't even bother to move the dead body out of view. Like, step one, if you're going to kill someone and pretend to be them, pretend to be their replacement, you might want to move the body after you kill them.
That's a good thought. Sure.
Just drag the body. And the whole time Tara was like, before all this, she was like, I guess this is clearly like a show that's made for kids because of like how much everyone's over explaining what they're doing.
That's the thing. I don't think it is.
And everyone's blah, blah, blah. And then like right as she said that, Darth Vader like kills a child by snapping his neck. And I was like, oh, well, never mind.
Yeah. That's the thing. I think this is made for adults. I think they just have no...
It's just so bad.
Yeah, they just have no concept of like how to tell a story.
It's really bad. I was telling her like, these have gotten worse. Like Boba Fett was like, not very good.
Yeah.
This is actively bad.
Yeah, so
far,
I couldn't finish Boba Fett, if we're being honest. So I can't judge it. But what I can say is Obi-Wan, not good. And like I didn't have the highest of expectations, but yeah, and maybe we'll do like a full episode on it or something and have Kellen on. But so I'll save my critique, maybe, but I don't want to overpromise. But one thing that bothered me with that episode 3, and this happens a few times during the show, and if you continue, you'll see this exact thing.
Yeah.
You'll see this type of storytelling happen over and over. In episode 3, Obi-Wan and Vader have a confrontation. Mm-hmm. Vader lights this big fire and throws Obi-Wan on it.
Yeah.
And he's like writhing in pain for a minute.
Yeah.
And it looks awful. Yeah. And then Vader does like a force push.
Yes.
And pushes him out of the fire.
Extinguishes the fire.
And it extinguishes the fire.
Yes.
Then the lady person starts the fire back.
Yeah.
And Vader's like, well, can't do anything.
What am I going to do? There's fire in the way of me. I literally said that. I was like, you put it out just a second ago. Just do it again. And he's like,
literally,
I think we should go home. And then it's like, we're going to let these people get away. And so we all leave the scene. And the next time we see those people, they're like just over the dirt hill. They didn't even flee. They're just like, oh, thank God. I guess they left. Hey, we need to get him to a hospital.
Right. It's the dumbest thing because that happens
bad.
More than once where a power is displayed and then something happens 2 minutes later that the power would then be useful at stopping and they don't do it. And I'm like, the only explanation is that like there's a force recharge and anytime you use the force, your meter has to fill up again like a video game.
An early model iPhone battery.
Exactly. So like God, Vader's already? Like, oh no, I can't do it again. I've
got 20% left.
I can't waste it here. Sorry guys. But no,
I need my force lightning cable.
So two things. All I would have had to do, three things, is force push it and extinguish it, walk around it. It's not a big fire. Or three,
it's like a 20-foot fire.
Presumably your suit is fireproof.
Mm-hmm.
You fell into lava and that's why you're in the suit. I would not get into a suit that's not fireproof. It
would have been so funny if he had like a flashback of like, oh
PTSD.
No, it was like 4 days. Well, I guess it was 10 years ago. But like, like he, like a real quick 90s, like cross dissolve screen of like, remember what it was like when I almost burned to death. And he has like a panic attack. He's like, oh,
I'm afraid of fire.
I can't. You guys got to get me out of here. Huh? I lit my enemy on fire without thinking that maybe I'm still
afraid
kind
of fire.
Scarred by this fire.
This is the equipment of Batman summoning bats in Batman Begins and then being so afraid he can't leave.
Oh, fuck.
Oh, no. No, the bats are here. I didn't think this through.
Shouldn't have summoned a fear that's also my greatest fear. Whoops. Torture
my bad.
101. Yeah. Oh boy. Anyway. No, it's just a bad show so far, and I'm honestly kind of shocked. So
I am too. I'm shocked because like I know probably what it took to get Obi-Wan, to get Ewan McGregor involved.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he would read these scripts and say, "Yeah, this is how I want to do it."
Yeah, that's what shocks me. It's like he's in this. Like his involvement was like the only reason I even cared about this show.
Right. I stupidly figured that Ewan McGregor would not sign on to something that was subpar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why I thought that. He did do Birds of Prey, so I don't know why I thought that.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we've learned is he likes money. He won't say no to money.
That is correct.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, there's a little preview of what's to come for us talking about Star Wars.
There you go.
Oh,
by the way, I'm munching on popcorn right now. I hope this isn't like super distracting. I'll stop. It's bad podcasting.
I'll just take several hours to take it out later.
Yeah, I figured I'll just put you through the ringer on this episode.
It's okay. Dustin doesn't think I'm working hard enough. So
Brought to you by Smart Food Popcorn.
I'm going to eat during the podcast because this is too easy for Hooper now.
I'm hungry. I went to the pool today, so I'm just like famished. You know that after pool hunger? And then like you eat dinner and you're like, I'm still hungry.
Oh,
help.
Dude. Yeah, we had an event at our house over the weekend, and I have a lot of leftover food, so
yeah,
I'm like, I'm eating like charcuterie for breakfast.
That's fine.
I had garlic stuffed olives today with my lunch. It's not something I normally have laying around.
Right.
I've got a bunch of food that I really need to eat. So ever since last year, I've had the task of, my whole 2001 and 20 years film lists. And so I watched some movies and I went through, I didn't watch every single film that came out in 2001, but I basically went down the list and said, okay, here's some stuff that either interests me or, I remember liking this, let me watch it again, or I never saw this and this gets talked about a lot. That being said, there's still a fair amount of things I did not see, but it's that other people, if anyone one day decides to like fact check me, like, what about this movie that like everyone loves? It's like, I didn't think it looked that great, and or it wasn't on streaming anywhere, and or I just ran out of time and just didn't care. So
right.
Yeah. So I made a list of what I'm going to call my I don't want to call it the best of 2001. I don't want to call it my favorite of 2001. I just want to say here's movies in 2001 that I think that I enjoyed for one reason or another that I think are worth recommending, especially after all this time.
Sure.
And then I'll let you know about my bevy of honorable mentions and dishonorable mentions.
Okay. After
the fact, I have some paragraph or shorter hot takes on a few of these.
Okay.
So let's talk about what to recommend first, and then if people want to stick around for the others, we can do that. So I have a list of 12, I guess, because I had things on here that were higher and then I downvoted them after something else took their spot and didn't delete them because I am lazy. So number 12 for 2001 is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And we've talked about this before. Like it's really, I didn't write any notes for it or anything, but just kind of like as a warm up. I think I mentioned this the last time we were on the air. Like the Harry Potter movies are great. But the first couple films are kind of weak in retrospect. And, considering how good the later ones are, the early ones don't really hold up. The CG is, comparatively janky. The kids are all great in their roles, but it's still a bunch of kids acting.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, by the way, is another thing about Kenobi that's just terrible. I
know.
Anyways,
I feel you.
So I put Harry Potter at number 12.
Okay.
I don't know.
I do like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I think it's a solid little family adventure movie, but it doesn't really rise above that, and it won't be until what's it called? Prisoner of Azkaban. Is that it? That's what it's called. Gosh, my brain is a mess today. And
got the pool brain.
I've got the pool brain. I stayed up late last night writing, and like my brain's just messed up. So, nevertheless, yes, that's when the series kind of elevates itself into something a little more meaningful. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like at that point, it's still plenty kid friendly, and it's still absolutely for kids. But like that's sort of the moment where Alfonso Cuarón takes it and makes it into something a little bit better. Yeah. So you're right. The first two movies are weaker by comparison, but they're not like bad movies. No. They're not in any way, unwatchable. So yeah, I agree.
No. And even at the time, they still had clearly like nailed the ideal tone of the books.
Yeah.
Like this is light and these are kids discovering things, but there is this undercurrent of dread.
Yes.
Throughout. And even that still exists in those movies. And that's what keeps it from being just a silly kids movie about wizards. It keeps it like, no, this is like a serious story and like a real threat. And there's a real sadness that underlies this character, even when he's happy.
For sure. And I think you can totally tell that the seeds are planted for like a serialized story that's going to span the entire franchise. Mm-hmm. And so there's plenty for an adult to latch onto, like, oh, this story is definitely deeper than just, this little mystery that the kids are on right now. There's more to it and there's more coming. And I think that's exciting.
Okay. Number 11, I've got the Princess Diaries.
Mm-hmm.
The Princess Diaries. So I had seen this movie before, but I hadn't watched it recently. Sure. Have you've seen the Princess Diaries, haven't you?
Yeah, but it's been a long time.
The Princess Diaries is solid.
Okay.
Again, you want to look at everything that came out in 2001. It's like, wow, really? The Princess Diaries? But like, I don't know. I appreciate, a well-structured, enjoyable film as much as anybody else. So
yeah.
The Princess Diaries, I mean, this is, I think, when people became aware of Anne Hathaway, right? This was like her big breakout role. Yep. It gets referenced all the time. And it holds up, I think, other than like 2001 high school stuff. Sure. It's still like, this is some solid character conflict, like, but you're becoming someone you're not. And like, you know, fish out of water, got to learn to be proper and stuff, but like, you know, bring some real authenticity to this role that I'm now born into and stuff. Like there's all that good screenwritery stuff. That's just really like, it's worth studying as a screenplay, just like, I think at least like, and it's a really solid movie that I think just holds up. So
sweet. Yeah, I can't add anything. I haven't seen it in so long, but I remember Julie Andrews being cool, like being a standout in that film. So yeah,
it's pretty solid, I gotta say.
Okay.
Number 10 is Shrek.
Okay.
We make fun of Shrek because it just became this stupid thing. As a franchise, but the first Shrek is pretty great. Okay. So, you know, we got some jank animation, of course, you know, making mud is hard. But all in all, Shrek is a extremely creative, genuinely funny movie that has a lot going for it, and especially for adults. I mean, when you get down to like the whole, like Jeffrey Katzenberg wanted to make an anti-Disney film, there's a whole thing you can find about the reasons why Shrek was even pitched. And it was just a big fuck you to Disney, basically. And I just think it's really, really brilliant and really funny. And there's just a lot of things about it that are really cool. And I don't know, I was watching it, I was just like, wow, I was just surprised at, because I was thinking like, yeah, I remember Shrek. I remember liking Shrek as a kid, but like, it's not going to hold up. It holds up pretty well. It's actually, it's a pretty clever movie. And this is before it became just a silly money train for DreamWorks. Yeah.
It's probably one of the movies that I saw the most when I was a kid. Yeah, not necessarily through any fault of my own, but like any family function where like there was a bunch of kids, it was like, just put on Shrek, you know, or like, you go to a dentist office and they're playing Shrek, you know, it's like, that was the talk of the town at the time. And I remember the general feeling around it when it came out was like, the adults, at least around me, were like, ooh, I don't know, that's a little too adult, you know, whatever. Like I hear it's really adult. I don't know if we need to see this kind of a thing. And then everyone saw it and it was like, oh, it's really like, yeah, there's stuff for adults in it, but it's really not like so overtly adult that a kid can't watch it.
Right.
And so everybody kind of like ate their own words on it and it became really popular. And of course, like everybody had it on VHS and we just like wore it out. And again, I don't know that I ever owned it, but I saw it like 8 billion times.
We did. We had it on DVD.
I know I had Shrek 2 on DVD. I don't know if I ever had the first Shrek. The weird thing is, I think, yes, hold on, wait.
Do you have it? Dustin,
I have all 4 of these. Sorry, my mic just fell over. Are there 4 movies? I don't even know.
There might be 4.
There are 4 movies. I have all 4 of them on Blu-ray.
Wow.
I found it in a bargain bin and paid like $2 for this, and I've never watched it once. So there you go.
It's Shrek 1 is worth revisiting. And there's some stuff in Shrek 2 that, I mean, there's funny jokes, obviously, but like that's where it's like, okay, what are we doing? Like, where are we supposed to be going with this? And then things get more simplistic story-wise, you know, but they do get broadened and built out and funny story world-wise.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a lot of funny stuff in the second movie about like that talks a lot about commercialism and you know, there's hilarious like products and apparel and ads that are in the second movie, but like, which is funny and expansive and everything. And that's great. But I prefer the relative simplicity and cleverness of just this movie. Yeah.
What I remember, the standout of like Shrek 2 was that it was lampooning like LA, like Los Angeles culture and like Hollywood. And so I remember that, but with the first film, it's just a fairy tale, and it's telling an anti-Disney story and whatever. And that's really cool. What I think is really cool about Shrek, and if you ever look at the behind the scenes of it, it's really fascinating because originally Chris Farley was set to play Shrek. And you can go on YouTube and you can actually hear his dialogue. There are excerpts floating around out there of him, and it was a much different film at that point. And then Mike Myers was cast after Chris Farley passed away, and Mike recorded the entire film without the accent, without Shrek's signature accent. And everything, like, it just didn't quite like fit right, but nobody knew why. And as I understand it, Mike Myers called up Spielberg and said, Steven, I want to re-record all my dialogue, but this time I want to use a Scottish accent. And Spielberg was like, cool. Yeah, that may be what the movie needs. And I think, I could very well be wrong, but I feel like it was on Mike Myers' dime. Like, I think he paid for it. And like, he felt so strongly about that he paid for, the studio time and whatever else, and re-recorded all of his lines well after like animation had begun. Maybe it was mostly locked, and re-recorded all of those lines with the accent. And I may be paraphrasing or fudging on some of those details, but that's the general story. And I think that the behind the scenes of this film is kind of fascinating to me.
No, it truly is. And it's as much entertaining to read about why it got made in the first place as it is to watch it. I mean, if you're obviously if you're an adult and you're like, oh, should I watch Shrek again? And like, it's like a fun companion piece. I think it was on like a Cinema Blend or something, which is weird because usually their content's kind of trash, but somebody had written like this big thing of like, let's talk about why Shrek got made. And I read it and I was like, that was fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Number 9 is I have Donnie Darko on here.
Okay.
Donnie Darko is overhyped to me as a movie. Like it's one of those movies. It deserves praise, but it's one of those like, yes, I like it as much as the culture seems to like it. The film culture seems to like it, but I feel like I'm here for the right reasons. I feel like I'm here for the mystery and the filmmaking and the like, okay, what's going on kind of stuff. And other people are here because it's like, I like dark stuff and Frank.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, great. Good for you. I feel like I'm interested in the movie itself. And, Donnie Darko is you've seen this, right?
I have not seen Donnie Darko.
Oh, you haven't seen Donnie Darko?
I've not seen
Donnie Darko is, so, Jake Gyllenhaal. And what's Donnie Darko is essentially a movie about this really disturbed kid who has pre-existing like kind of like behavioral mental issues. And he is visited by this creepy bunny costumed specter who's like, here's the exact time when the world ends. And it's like it's essentially like him trying to figure out what his role in all of this is, what his destiny is in all this. And it's a kind of really slow, like, trail of him just kind of navigating the kind of like the banal existence of, the late 80s in California. And as like a, high schooler, and with this kind of surreal element of the world ending and time travel and, seeing things. And it's one of those, it's like, it's interesting because of its execution. And just Jake Gyllenhaal's really good in it and creepy. And, so Donnie Darko made the list because it's just interesting. It's just an interesting movie. I've seen it. I think this is my 3rd time watching it, and I wouldn't call it like good, but like, I didn't write anything here, but one of the things about it that is good is that just it wraps up and you're like, I'm not fully sure I'm aware of everything that just happened, but it feels tidy. It feels like it makes sense.
Sure.
So, there's big old Reddit threads about the plot of this movie and what exactly happens. And it's one of those movies where you're like, okay, it happened, but like you start to pick it apart like Inception. Like you get what happened, but like people start to argue about like if it makes sense or not. So, but If you haven't seen Donnie Darko, I watched it, I think, on IMDb TV back when it was still IMDb TV. Now it's Freevee.
Yes.
So it might still be on there. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Okay, number 8, The Fast and the Furious.
Okay.
So, 2001 was when this film first came out. And what's cool about The Fast and the Furious by itself is that it's basically Point Break. You know, it's undercover cop gets in with like a gang of, you know, I say bank robbers. They steal they boost trucks. Like the plot of Fast and the Furious is, for some reason, the FBI it has some undercover agents working people stealing DVD VCR combos from trucks. That's what the FBI considers a good use of its resources. And then, of course, by like the 10th movie, these people are going to space and, you know,
right.
all kinds of stuff. But The Fast and Furious is actually a really solid movie. And, you know, the driving's really cool. And, again, aside from some 2001 silliness, you know, this is the beginning of these characters' relationships and journeys that do get paid off in other in later films. And it's the beginning of why people like these movies so much. And, but as a film, it's really, really solid. And obviously structurally, as a movie has to be, you know, at this time in cinema history, and with this kind of movie, like the script has to be pretty airtight, and it is. You know, again, if you've seen Point Break, you understand like the character conflict of the Johnny Utah / Brian O'Connor, character. Like, I'm trying to do my job. Hey, man, that was too close. No, there's no way I'm going to wear a wire, man. And then you get in with these guys, and now you have a bond. And so now you're too close to your mark. And it's like, oh, I don't want to bring him to justice. And now I think I'm in love with his sister. And, you know, conflict.
Yep.
So, Fast and the Furious is solid.
Another one I have not seen.
You've seen the 8th film.
I've seen only the 8th film of this franchise. Very randomly.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to fix that. I got to get everyone together to do a whole thing. When the last one comes out, I want to talk about the entire franchise.
Okay.
All right. Number 7, I have Black Hawk Down.
Okay.
Which I saw for the second time for this list. And so I actually put down star ratings at this point. So I gave it 3.5 stars. And what I wrote was that it's a really well-made war movie. Everyone talks about Black Hawk Down, kind of in the pantheon of like well-executed war movies. I didn't love it. But the fact that everything kind of takes place in one raid, it keeps that keeps the pace going. There's a whole lot of narrative beats that go on to where it could feel long if this was like something that took place over a week.
Sure.
But the idea that like this is a single day, a single occurrence, there's just this inherent sense of like, okay, the clock is ticking, like they could be running up on the block on you. And, you know, some very horrific deaths and terrible things happen in this movie. Yeah. But I mean, I'm not sure in the end what exactly they were trying to say with it, or I didn't really latch on to any of these characters very much. But I have to give it up to Ridley Scott for delivering a really well executed movie nonetheless. Yeah.
I haven't seen this since, a long time ago. I don't even know when. So I feel like I can't really review it either. But my memory is that I liked it. My memory is that, you know, Ridley Scott made a good movie. So cool.
Yeah, it's just a good movie. It's one of those where it's like, when we talk about why Ridley Scott's such a good director, it's like you put it in Black Hawk Down because here's another large scale, you know, insanely complicated movie that he made that's well done, you know?
Yeah. And you know what's great about Ridley Scott too? I mean, I think his stuff does tend to be hit or miss. But what's interesting about him as a filmmaker is he's able to easily juggle something that's dramatic and serious with something that's epic, or something that's comedic, or something that's horror, or something that's sci-fi. And he's like or this war movie, he can do just about anything. And I think that's pretty rare because you think about like even something like Matchstick Men, which is so overlooked, but it exists in like Ridley Scott's upper echelon of movies to me. It's just weird that same director also made Blade Runner. Right? Yeah. That's just weird.
It is.
But yeah.
Magic Man is great. That's a good one too.
Yeah.
Sticking with war movies, number 6, Enemy at the Gates.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have not seen this.
Also 3.5. This is Jude Law, Rachel Weisz, Joseph Fiennes, and Ed Harris. And
is Owen Wilson in this?
That is Behind Enemy Lines.
Ah, there you go. Another one I haven't seen. Okay, gotcha.
No. Enemy at the Gates is World War II Russia, and we have a Russian sniper, Vasily Zaitsev, played by Jude Law, who basically, him sort of becoming like this. He's just a good sniper. And so they keep using him, and then they propagandize him, and then there's like a love story in there, and then like fighting for the freedom of our country, and
so it's Captain America: The First Avenger.
Much less like there's no him like he doesn't like being the poster boy for the war effort or anything, and then Ed Harris is this German sniper that the Nazis send in to specifically hunt Jude Law. So what's great about Enemy at the Gates, it really holds up. It really, really, really holds up well. There's a lot of commitment to atmosphere and setting because there's a whole lot of like him just hiding among rubble and waiting. And the production design on this movie is ridiculous. There's just wreckage, like the concept of like designing an entire space geographically that's just a gigantic abandoned like business park or city block. I don't even know how they did it. I guess that you just go around studios and you're like, we need set materials. Like, hey, there's no way we're gonna be able to build all these sets in time. We're not building them. We're gonna bulldoze all these bricks into this gigantic parking lot and make it, war-torn Russia, and somehow establish cinema geography around there. It's crazy. The production design team outdid themselves. The sets are massive, detailed, and numerous. There's a dozen different places where these I'm going to call them sniper battles because there's not even battles, just like these scenes take place. All of our leads are great. Jude Law is great. Rachel Weisz, Joseph Fiennes, Ed Harris, all great. The tension and the character dynamics are compelling. The character motivations all track. There's a little bit about like how much of this was made up or embellished after the fact. So, but that to me doesn't really matter because that's just showbiz. But a lot of people, I was doing some reading about it, and apparently at the time, like that was a big deal to people at the time. Like in 2001, people like couldn't get past that. They're like, but it might be fake. It's a movie. Right. It's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
So whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
It's great. I'd definitely recommend Enemy at the Gates. I remember liking it and I owned it, but I forgot it just really holds up really well.
Sweet.
All right. Number 5, Blow. Also 3.5.
Sweet.
This is probably the dozenth time I'd seen Blow. And again, another one. Always liked it. Yep. Didn't think too much about it in terms of like, is it really good? And I watched it. Holds up.
Sweet.
Still moves really quickly, really well. Did you ever see this with me? I feel like we watched this.
Yeah, you showed it to me, I think our freshman year in college.
Yeah.
So that's the last time I've seen it.
Yeah, but it's so Blow is very quickly paced. There's just a lot going on, a lot of time being spanned, lots of like stuff happening. Okay, and then we started selling cocaine instead of weed, and here's how our business accelerated. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So so that still makes sense. The performances are very very good. Johnny Depp is very good in Blow. Ray Liotta plays his father. Ray Liotta is terrific in Blow.
Yep. Cool.
He's just this increasingly sad character who still has this love for his son, even though he's an international drug kingpin. And he's just like this sad old, repairman from Boston. He's great in it. I forgot the actor's name who plays Diego. Oh crap, I forgot his name. He's great. Paul Rubens is in this movie, Pee-wee. Paul Rubens is great. He is really good. Franca Patant is good in the movie. Just a lot of great actors in this movie. And a lot of people you see in bit roles all the time. It's just everyone's just really good. Exactly as I remember it. Human drama is just as good as I remembered it.
Sweet.
Really good. Oh, Penelope Cruz. Penelope Cruz is great in this movie.
Yep.
Yeah, she's great. Okay, so that's Blow. Number 4, The Mummy Returns. Since we talked about this within the last year on the podcast, people should just go listen to the Mummy episode with that the 4 of us did. Much more detail in that review, but it's like I said at that point, they did a lot of great action and set pieces utilizing our 2 lead actors really well. And we talked about how story-wise their relationship was strengthened since the previous film in a way that is really great and makes sense. And they incorporated more gunplay into the stunts. And I wrote, good God, Rachel Weisz is beautiful. But The Mummy Returns is a really, really great sequel. And 20 years later, it holds up really well. It's just a really good action film.
Yeah, agreed. Again, go listen to our other review, but yeah, for sure. I loved this movie and definitely recommend it.
Number 3, Memento.
Yay!
Yeah, I gave this 4 stars. It's been a while since I'd seen Memento. I used to have the DVD of it that was like the case file.
Yeah, I've got that. It's around here.
You have it? Yeah, So the film, I wrote the film is transfixing.
Yeah.
That specific word.
Yep.
You're looking at every little thing because you are trying to sort of orient yourself in the narrative, just like Guy Pearce is. It rewards multiple rewatches, obviously, because of the very nature of it just being told in reverse.
Yep.
It's very well acted.
Yep.
Every watch of the film gives dimension to the performances. The more you watch this film, the better the performances get, because you're realizing how many emotions and story beats that people are playing that you just don't catch because you're only seeing the film through Leonard Shelby's eyes the first time through. And the more you watch it, the more you remember, wait, this character is actually like bad and stuff like that. So everything changes once we go backward in time. The performances are recontextualized in every scene. And so it's just obviously a very creative film. But logistically, like, for Christopher Nolan to have pulled off such a well executed film and kept track of all the story and how do you set up something that's supposed to occur at the end of a story? Like how do you do all the introducing at the narrative end of a story?
Correct.
Like all that stuff is just like, that is some very, very technical filmmaking. And it's really, really, really well done.
Yeah, I agree. And it makes me want Christopher Nolan every time I see this, which I haven't seen it in a while, but every time I see it, it makes me want Christopher Nolan to go back to something like this, which is, and to be fair, I think he was trying with Tenet. Like, I think Tenet is the blockbuster, I've got too much money to spend version of Memento. And you get lost in the weeds of like the mechanics and the special effects and the visual effects of it. And you forget exactly what you just said, which is a transfixing story. And the fact that, like, this thoughtful approach to how do we introduce characters? How do we get them to, the audience to latch onto those characters and root for those characters, despite the fact that we're beginning at the narrative end? That's thoughtful. And if I were in those shoes, I think it would almost be too much for my brain to handle. Like, okay, I have to tell this story. I've mapped out a story. Now I'm going to flip it and make sure that the things you're supposed to do at the beginning of the movie, I'm doing here at the beginning of the movie, which is actually the end of the story. Yeah. And like trying to manipulate the story in that way, I think is beyond my capabilities. But all that said, like it's clearly what Christopher Nolan is good at is establishing good characters in a good story. And we see that throughout his filmography. You know, we're thinking about like The Prestige, where it's another film that's told non-linearly that rewards its viewers upon a second watch. And it's very similar to this in that way. But not since then, not since The Prestige, in my opinion, has any of Christopher Nolan's pushing forward the envelope actually mattered or been a success. And so to me, this is what I wish Christopher Nolan would go back to and leave behind the slick, 007 style of, wish fulfillment filmmaking that he's been doing, and give us just good characters again. And I would be totally on board. And I think that's his strong skill set. Just give me something creative wrapped around a good story. And Memento's, one of the best independent films ever made. And such a strong outing for not a first time director, but this is his second film?
Yeah, I believe so.
So, which his first film following is also very good. If you're interested in Christopher Nolan's filmography, check that out as well. But yeah, I wish he would get back to something like this and leave behind all of the, millions and millions of dollars to get thrown at his feet to like do things with him. And, it just something simple and good story is what he's best at.
Yes. Yeah. So if anyone listening has not watched Memento, Memento's great. It's one of those things that has the potential to elevate the taste and the appreciation of the average moviegoer.
Yes.
Like it's so well done and such high art to me.
Yeah.
It's one of those rare things that can entertain an audience and by the end of them go, wow, I never thought a story could be told this way.
Yep.
But
you have to pay attention.
Right. And most movies that are made don't do that. Like Enemy at the Gates is a good movie. It's really good. And you watch it and you're like, that was good. And I really enjoyed that. Here's all the things I enjoyed about it. But those are all the standard elements of film just done well.
Yeah.
So even though it's a good movie, at the end of the day, you're still getting what you kind of expected, which was, a good movie. Memento is like, I'm going to show you exactly what this medium can do. And I'm going to do it in a way that's so clear that even the average moviegoer expecting an average movie can appreciate it and walk away like with a new sense of taste.
Yeah.
And that is saying something, I think.
So speaking of, I'll let you move on, but if we're talking about Christopher Nolan and his early filmography and, what a good executed, a well-executed, example of like typical film structure is, watch the next film that he made, Insomnia. It's a very typical movie. It's very like straightforward. There's no special tricks that Nolan is known for in it, but it's a very well told story. And to me, it really works. So if you're also interested in like, how does Christopher Nolan do with just like a normal script? There you go.
All right. Number 2, I've got Ocean's 11.
Okay.
4-star. I've loved Ocean's 11 for a long time. We had the DVD. I think my brother had it or something. So I watched Ocean's 11 all the time when I was a teenager.
Yep.
It's great. It's just so good. So well paced. And here's an important factor. It's really fun to watch.
Yes.
It's just fun to watch. It's not a slog. It's not a chore. There's no, oh great, this part. Like everything about it is just fun.
Yeah.
That's really all I have written down for it. Like Soderbergh, like there's other Ocean's movies and blah, blah, blah. And but Soderbergh made a movie that heist movies are just great. Yeah. But he made a heist movie that was really stylish. Yeah. He's got a bunch of actors who really iconic and leading actors in their own right, all of them almost. Just made them so interesting and quirky, and everyone, and on top of the fact that everyone just seems to be enjoying making the movie a lot. It's just so good. I loved it. Like, especially considering that it's a remake.
Yes.
It's a remake of a Sinatra movie, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like, to me, this kind of perfected the heist movie like formula in a way that cemented it as a genre in a weird way. Like it said, here's the tropes of the genre. Here's, the aesthetic of the genre. And almost every heist movie since has played on Ocean's 11 in some way. And like paid homage to it in one way or another. So that's what makes Ocean's 11 important. Now, it did spawn 2 sequels. I don't really remember the sequels as fondly. I know I saw them, but I don't really remember them.
No.
Al Pacino's in one of them. That's all I remember.
13.
The third one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 12, I don't really remember much, but I will say, like, Ocean's 11 is almost like the perfect heist movie.
Yeah.
Like if you compiled a list of the best heist movies ever, I mean, it's got to be up there.
Yeah, like the top 3 of this list are like the movies that I would like bring with me. Like, okay, if I would leave the rest behind, they were great, but like these ones are all like master classes in a particular genre,
Yep.
Or if it's Memento, it's like this kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just its own thing that's great. I guess mystery, but like,
sure.
But as far as what Ocean's 11 did for heist films, it's iconic.
Yeah.
Speaking of iconic, number 1, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a 5-star film. It's my number 1. And I think we've probably talked about it at some point. There's I mean, what is there to say? I mean, everyone knows how popular and how great and how iconic the Lord of the Rings films are. It was a joy to watch this again for this list, and to watch the extended edition and appreciate it and like it and welcome it. Just forget the scale at which these movies are made, but just like again, like how well do they hold up? Like just considering just how well they hold up as films. Everything's still so exciting. It's just incredibly well done filmmaking, just great character relationships, great pace, great scale, great action, great emotion. Howard Shore's music is just awe-inspiring, and everything about this movie is just perfect. So well. So like what this did, if you want to put it into like what this did for film, like what it did for epic fantasy is just like everything that came after it was compared to it, and almost none of it measured up. I mean, it's just, what do you say? What else do you say? It's the best film of 2001, hands down.
Yes, I agree. Best movie of 2001. One of my favorite movies of all time. Forget what this movie did for movies. Forget what this movie did for cinema. Yeah. What this movie did for me was elevate this thing that I enjoyed, movies, into a true passion where I thought, I like, look at the list of names at the end of The Lord of the Rings. All of those people were paid to work on this and make it happen.
Yep.
I could be one of those people.
Yeah.
And that was what it did for me. So The Lord of the Rings is very special to me in that regard, because yes, there were movies that I loved prior to The Lord of the Rings. Absolutely there were. But it wasn't until The Lord of the Rings that I realized, like, whoa, we're telling like actual stories here that are emotional and mean something to people. Yeah. And when this came out, we were young, right? And I did not see this one in theaters.
I did.
Did you? Awesome.
Yeah, my mom took me.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome because for me, my first exposure to Tolkien was in between. I don't even remember what grade it was. In between two grades, like we had a summer reading list, and one of the books required was The Hobbit.
Right.
And I was like, oh, crap, this stupid fantasy thing. It's dumb. It's for babies, whatever. And like I read it and I hated every second of it. Literally hated every second of reading The Hobbit. And then I realized, like, looking back on it, I just hated reading what people told me to read.
Right.
I didn't give the book a fair shake, and I've read it since then and love it.
Right.
So but back then, like, I hated it. And so when I saw The Lord of the Rings and was like, oh, this is Equal to the Hobbit, I was like, that's dumb. I'm not seeing that. And it wasn't until I believe that I don't think I even saw The Two Towers in theaters. I think I saw Return of the King in theaters. And that was the only one I saw. And I watched it and sat there floored because I'd watched the two previous. I went to Blockbuster and got them and like watched them and was like, oh, this is actually really good. And then I saw the third one in theaters and I did not cry. But I mean, I think I would cry now. I have not watched Return of the King I have not watched the trilogy in full since let's see, Sarah and I were dating, so that probably would have been like 2015, maybe 2014, when we sat down and watched all of them. And I think I absolutely would cry now because there have been times where like some of the music comes on Spotify, like as I'm driving to work, and I'm like, crap, dude, I'm gonna cry just from this song. Like, you know what I mean?
It's so good.
It's so good. And so I can talk all day long about why The Lord of the Rings is fantastic, but we all know why. It tells a good story about good characters. It's fun to watch. It's exciting to watch. It's easy to understand. And the stakes are the highest that they're ever going to be in this world. And it's just so fresh and fun and great, and it's art on every level. Like you just mentioned Howard Shore, you just mentioned like all these things, like just the work of John Howe and the work of all of the production designers who created hair and makeup and wardrobe and all of the shot on location in New Zealand. Like every part of this is firing on all cylinders, and there is not a single part of it that does not work. And so I'd say all three. I kind of count them as one movie,
right?
But in my brain, they're just all jumbled up as one awesome story.
Yeah,
it's perfect. It is absolutely perfect.
Yeah, this movie and the others I had on DVD as they came out. So we'd get like the 2-disc, and so I would watch all of those special features over and over and over again. When I was a kid and it started around this time, I would put on the subtitles. Yeah, actually, even before, some of them didn't have them, but I would put on the subtitles for movies, and I would pause and I would hand write the entire script on a legal pad. Yeah. Because I was studying dialogue and I was just studying. That's just what I did. I was just a weird kid who was just doing that. So I had all three of these movies. I had Ocean's 11. I did it for that. I did that for Spider-Man 1. I did it for plenty of these things. So like I'm very intimately aware of these movies. Yeah. To a micro level like that, and I've watched all those features, and I know a lot about them, and I just and the same. It was for me. It was one of those where I was just like, people make these, and I could make these, and like this is how they make these, and this is like one of the biggest films ever made. So like, if you can understand how to make one of these movies, you can understand how to make a whole bunch of other kind of movies, and it just did a lot for the whole like, wow, like I think I want to do this. The perfect mixture of craft and emotional storytelling is just really, really great.
Yeah, I always say the first film school I ever went to was the special features on the Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
DVDs.
Yeah.
Like that was hands down. I still have them. I'll never get rid of the DVDs. Yeah. I have the Blu-rays too, but I'll never get rid of the DVDs because like that was my first film school.
Yeah. Some rando from CBS talking to Elijah Wood and still like, oh, it's crazy. It's, right. It's good stuff. And Yeah, man, there's plenty of moments in every single one of those movies where like I'm emotional. Like for me, like in this film, it's Boromir. It's Boromir saving the hobbits at the end, especially in the extended edition because he does a little more. But him running in and like saving their lives is just like, it's just great. It's just cinema. And like every time he gets shot and he kills a few more of them, you're just like, fuck. It's just, it's really, 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 really great.
Not to mention the death of Gandalf, like, fly, you fools. And then they all come out and they're all like crying out of the mines of Moria.
So
and I'm just like, oh man.
And there's so many moments in all these movies where like just my adrenaline's pumping, you know, I'll talk about the Two Towers, next time, but like, there's so many in there. I mean, just amazing stuff.
The music swell when Frodo says, "I'll take it. I'll take the ring," and it's like then everyone just stops.
Yeah,
but I do not know the way, and it's like this thing where it's like, what did this little guy just volunteer himself for this for? It's like, man, I don't know. It's so beautiful.
It's really beautiful.
We can talk obviously more about Return of the King because that's my favorite of the trilogy. It just wraps everything up so beautifully. But like there are specific points in my brain where I know, the next time I sit down and watch those movies, I'm going to cry at these points. I already know it.
This might be my favorite of the trilogy.
It's most people's.
And because for a lot of people, this feels a lot more intimate.
It's more tangible
than the other ones do because there's larger scale, more effects. There's just more writing and character in this movie, and that's probably why. But
yep.
There's plenty of moments in the other ones that are just tremendous and pay off everything set up in this movie, and this sets up things, like you said, one big story. A few other things from 2001 that and these are not really in any order of quality, just sort of like, here we go. I saw the Royal Tenenbaums for the first time. Never seen it before.
Okay.
Wes Anderson.
Yeah,
everyone's like Royal Tenenbaums. I gave it 2 stars. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. It didn't piss me off, but not only was I not invested in this story, I was just bored. I was just falling asleep. I just was totally disengaged. And it is a Wes Anderson movie. You've got the perfectly symmetrical, framing and everything, and so the craft is on display. But like the script is just, I was just bored to tears. I didn't care. And it's so quirky that if you can't latch on to me, I can't appreciate your style because I don't care what happens to anybody.
I feel that way about all Wes Anderson, and I've admittedly only seen very little of him, but yeah.
I really like Moonrise Kingdom a lot.
Okay.
And I don't think I finished for some reason the Grand Budapest Hotel, but there's a lot there that's good. I like Wes Anderson, but I do find his stuff to be difficult to latch onto emotionally.
Yeah.
I appreciate him on a technical level.
Sure.
He's a little obsessive about it, but whatever. It's his prerogative.
Yep.
All right. Ali, 3.5 stars.
Yep.
I'd seen it a long time ago, but I hadn't seen it as like an adult. And so I was glad I watched it again, but it didn't leave a lasting impact on me. It's a flat arc. Muhammad Ali is just changing the culture around him as he's adjusting to, the civil rights movement. And flat arc is always a risky move for me because the protagonist doesn't grow or evolve. And in the case of this film, the third act just doesn't build too much. Everyone did a good job. Will Smith did a good job. Who directed this? Michael Mann, I think. Directed this. I forgot. Wow. Anyway, but to me the film is just okay. It's long. The first half is really well paced actually. The second half kind of gets dragged out a little slower, which I get it. The story slows down. Ali stops boxing. He's got money problems, so but it's just the pace just drags to a halt. But it leads to a not very satisfying climax. There's a lot more interesting things going on in the American context at this time: civil rights, Vietnam, his ban from boxing, his money trouble, legal battles. And maybe it does give context to the significance of the Rumble in the Jungle. But it's still slow. If you've never seen it, I'd say it's 3.5. I mean, it's a good movie. The cast is great, but rewatching it, I was just like, I don't know, again, good, but it's just like, I don't know. There's other stuff. But it was important for Will Smith's career at the time, you know, because this was a fairly serious project for him to take on as someone who's, you know, not doing this kind of movie at the time. Yeah. So, all right. Hannibal, directed by Ridley Scott.
Yep. I
gave it a 3.
Okay.
Not a lot of thoughts. Well shot, well acted. Ultimately, not picking up on the message of the story. Again, it's more like, what are we talking about? This just Ridley Scott was asked to do a Hannibal Lecter movie, and this is what he wanted to do. Gorgeous, you know, a lot of European landscape. You know, it's great. But you know, Anthony Hopkins is obviously great, but the movie itself is pretty forgettable.
Yeah.
The Mexican, starring Brad Pitt, 3.5 stars. Much better film than it seems at face value. It's mostly just about this dude who has to go down to Mexico to retrieve like this famed pistol, this old pistol, and things ensue. The shining scene stealer in the movie is James Gandolfini. Every scene with him is magic.
Yeah.
And so every time he pops up, you're just like, oh, great, another scene with this character. That's great. But it's just really long. The movie's like over 2 hours long, and everything involving the lore of this pistol, they're just building up its history and then it was passed to the grandfather. It's just so boring and meaningless. It's just get me to the crime part of it. So, for the first time I saw Legally Blonde.
Okay.
Had never seen it before.
Yeah.
And pleasantly surprised. 3.5 stars. The film is 2001. So it's predicated on the notion that somebody like Elle Woods getting into Harvard is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of sexist and prejudicial today.
Right.
For me, the film has a lot going for it. There's a reason it's a cultural staple, and there's a reason it catapulted Reese Witherspoon to stardom because she's really great in it, and it's just a charming movie. And I liked it. I think there was a sequel that was made at some point, and so
I have not seen the sequel. There's another one coming.
Is there? See, I'll tune in for it. Like, you know, it's again in 2001, it was probably like much more groundbreaking for this kind of story, but like you know, I think it still holds up pretty well.
I saw that in theaters, by the way.
Really?
I did.
How'd that
I don't know why.
You didn't see Lord of the Rings, but you saw Legally Blonde?
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Did your mom not have like a babysitter that day? She's like, all right, Dustin, you're coming with me.
No, I just went to the theater and was like, I'll see it. Whatever.
Okay. You're a big Luke Wilson fan?
Yeah. I'm the only one. Sorry. I'm kidding.
A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger. Had seen it a few times.
Yeah.
Not as amazing as I remember. I remember I used to love the movie. I thought it was so cool and inventive, and you know, it's still a fun movie with a unique presentation. You know, it's a sports
music.
movie. Yeah. You know, it's structurally it's a sports movie about an athlete pretending to be somebody he's not, trying to excel in his sport, win the get the girl. So they do some fun stuff with contemporary music in the medieval setting, which is their reasoning is great, which is like whatever they're listening to would have been like rock and roll to them. Yep. So we're just trying to orient the audience and what they're dancing to. It's like, yes, it's anachronistic, but it's a solid artistic choice. But I will say the third act of the movie is really emotional. There's a bunch of stuff, if you remember, like where his dad, like he goes to see his father, and he's like, I thought my son was dead. And he's like, Father, I live. And he's like, William. And his father's blind. And it's just, you know, it's like, you'll always be my son. I'll always be proud of my son. I was like,
God, no.
God. It's like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Lord. Yeah. Knight's Tale, solid. Not so solid is Swordfish, which I gave 1 star. I used to own this movie. I genuinely do not know what I saw in it.
I haven't seen this movie.
It's just this Hugh Jackman is a hacker.
Any movie from 2001 with a hacker in it is probably not great.
He's a tall, handsome hacker. And he gets roped into this thing with like this, basically a domestic terrorist that John Travolta plays. Financially, this New World Order, blah, 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 whatever. Halle Berry's naked. And maybe I thought that the plot was cool.
That's why you liked it.
or that John Travolta may have been fun to watch, or that Halle Berry alone was worth seeing the movie.
Sure.
But the truth is the plot of the movie is just stupid. And the movie has so many needless action beats. The hacking scenes are ridiculous, just like they were in the 90s and early 2000s. And after a really cool opening scene, the movie's a total letdown. Like it starts with like this cool 360 shot of like these vests going off with these ball bearings, explosions and stuff. Stupid, convenient ending with completely unearned rewards and underexplained resolutions. Just one of those movies that just wraps up and you're like, why would that even? That's just dumb. Everyone just, okay. Yeah. So I don't recommend Swordfish if you were on the fence about this film. Rush Hour 2. Mm-hmm. I'm almost done. I got 3 more. Rush Hour 2. Another 1 star. Pissed me off. Again, used to love it. Used to love it.
Yeah.
The only good part of this movie is Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
And every scene that he is in, because Jackie Chan is great.
Yep.
And this was like the height of his popularity in America was these films. Yep. It's obvious that him and Chris Tucker really love working together. It's clear to me. But Chris Tucker's comedy does not translate well 20 years later. It's just obnoxious.
Yeah.
And Brett Ratner's gaze in retrospect especially feels gross. There's a whole scene where this Isabella character is getting undressed in an adjacent hotel and they're just watching her change.
Yeah.
And like taking turns looking through a telescope.
Yep.
And when you're 12, you're like, yeah.
Yeah.
But when you're like, when you're 33 and you're like, hey, an adult directed this, you're like, oh, this is weird. This is kind of crazy. Like this same woman, just as attractive, like great. But then you're like, wait a second though. Like this is a movie. Like,
right.
What are we doing? So, and then he's like, show me the badge. And he's like, she moves the robe over and like, she's on like her bra. And he's like, wait, show me again. Show me the badge. I didn't get a good look at that. And you're like, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
It just feels gross. But this is what movies were in the early 2000s.
Yep.
And I guess that's fine. It just doesn't bring with it much to recommend to a modern audience.
Okay. Fair
so
enough.
That's Rush Hour 2. Rat Race, 3 stars.
Okay.
Actually begins much better than it ends, but it begins surprisingly not dumb. We've got a diverse range of characters and situations that they're in. And the film is actually a little bit of a commentary about class systems with the millionaire characters. This is a movie about a bunch of strangers in Vegas who each mysteriously get like a gold, like a key, and they get sent to this conference room, and they find out but they're explained to by John Cleese, who is this eccentric billionaire. He's like, there's a lockbox in New Mexico. You got to go to Silver City, and inside is $2 million. That's it. No strings attached. Go.
Yep.
And they keep cutting back to those guys throughout the movie, and him and his billionaire friends are constantly, this is what they do. They're just betting. All right, who thinks that the Mr. Bean character will get there first? Who thinks it's going to be Seth Green and his Dane Cook looking brother with the tongue piercing, who is not Dane Cook? What about Whoopi Goldberg and her daughter? Like, just like, what about Breckin Meyer and Amy Smart, 2 actors we never see anymore? It's an interesting kind of fun comedic romp with multiple characters, multiple storylines. So Rat Race is solid. Then the movie ends at a Smash Mouth concert, so that's terrible. It's so terrible.
Yeah.
So Rat Race is solid. I still think it might be worth seeing, maybe if you're nostalgic for the early 2000s, but I would recommend more than that is the movie it was likely based on, which is a movie from 1964 called It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Mm-hmm. Same kind of premise. Bunch of characters learn they need to get to a big W in some city in California where there's money buried, and all the big actors of the time were in the movie. And Mickey Rooney was in the movie, and it's really funny. And there's a whole lot of like just sets, like car accidents and shit getting destroyed. And when you consider it's like 1964 and all this stuff they built, and it's a really fucking funny movie, even decades later. It's great. In fact, I'm gonna watch it again soon. Just talk myself into it.
There you go.
The last thing on here is Vanilla Sky. I gave it 3.5 stars, although I don't quite know what to make with this movie. It's a Cameron Crowe film starring Tom Cruise. It's a really well-made film, and I'm sure at the time it was a pretty surreal talker to people because it deals a lot with like what's real, what's not, you know. I just think it really collapses in on itself in the second half. I'm glad I finally checked it out. I read the theories online about whether people think that the events of the film are real or not, because it goes in some weird directions by the end of it, like with digital life extension and stuff, which is pretty insane for 2001. Mm-hmm. You know, the film's explanation of the plot seems to work best, so I can take it at face value that, you know, when they tell him at the end, like, no, like, you're not dreaming now. It's like, I can believe, you know, there's a bunch of alternate theories that just aren't supported by the movie. So
sure.
I don't know. I can see why it was fun at the time, but I don't know. It just depends on how much you like Tom Cruise, how much you like Cameron Crowe, and how much time you have on your hands.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
gotcha.
That is my 2001 list.
Awesome.
I've got 2002 films that I'm racking up here to watch, to do another list next year. And I do enjoy this. I enjoy watching these films. I enjoy revisiting them. And what they ultimately remind me of is just obviously, because it's 20 years ago, just a simpler time in movies, when movies in general were just, I don't know, a little simpler, a little more quaint. And like we were going through the beginning of what movies have become now. You know, this transition from middle budget stuff to franchise stuff.
Yeah, you can see the seeds planted of, like, you know, franchises and IPs and all of that being important, as well as the need for remakes and reboots and whatever. But you're right, it's still a simpler time because a movie feels like this was like a painstaking labor of a bunch of people that got together and made a movie and actually got it made through the studio system. And now it just feels like, A, there's so many options. Making a movie doesn't feel as impressive anymore.
Yeah.
And B, the movies that are made tend to be homogenous in a way that back in 2001, like everything on your list feels pretty distant from each other.
Yeah. Even something like Vanilla Sky. It's like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's not based on it, except maybe like a book or something, but like it's you know, audiences have never heard of Vanilla Sky at the time.
Right.
All they know is that Tom Cruise is in it. And it's like we were talking about with Tom Cruise being like the last movie star. It's like, even at the time, like there were much more actors in his position, even then, where it's like, I'm not sure what this is, but Tom Cruise is in it, so I'll check it out.
So let's go see it.
And they watch a movie that's like, that makes them think, and it's kind of out there and weird. You know, and they walk away going like, wow, I saw this crazy film, Vanilla Sky. And, you know, even though I don't really understand the ending, it was kind of cool and, you know, outside the box.
Right.
And it was made by an artist, you know, and I don't know what the last thing is that Cameron Crowe directed.
Didn't he do that movie where Emma Stone played a Hawaiian lady or something?
Oh, did he?
I think so. Sorry, I derailed.
No, I remember hearing about it and think that was like the last time I remember one of those films coming out and people being like, "Hey, like they ain't cool," you know?
Yeah, that was his actual last. His last actual
2017,
movie. 2015.
Oh,
he did do, it looks like, a couple of TV episodes for a show called Roadies, and then a short film for Stevie Nicks. But his last feature was 2015. Wow. And it was mired in that controversy.
Boy.
Yeah. But whatever. I mean, look, but yes, the 2001 was definitely a simpler time, and it felt like movies were an event in a way that now it doesn't necessarily feel as eventful. It's just like an inevitability that there are movies.
Yeah.
And in 2001, it was still like, oh, cool, a movie came out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And the early
maybe
2000s,
that's nostalgia talking, but
maybe, but like, you know, this was the time in our lives where we were really paying attention to movies on a technical level. Like just, you know, aside from like, that was fun or that's kind of exciting, to like, wow, that's really great. Like movies themselves are getting better. And also like the kinds of movies that are getting made are just, you know, I mean, again, we're going to get into other movies like Spider-Man the next time we come around. And then, you know, we've got Pirates of the Caribbean. We have plenty of movies being made that are just emblematic of what's to come, but like nonetheless, like it's no secret, I've said on the podcast before, I think Pirates 1 is a perfect film. Just like I think The Prestige is a perfect film. Pirates became something terrible and emblematic of what franchise filmmaking became.
Yep.
But nonetheless, that first movie is a technical, a symphonic achievement in filmmaking, and just happens to be a perfect movie.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it probably 2 years from now when I talk about 2003 films, but but like that's what I like about dipping into these lists and revisiting is coming back over those and going like, wow, this was made 20 years ago and this still holds up. Like, and things that were made at the time with less emphasis on intrinsic value and more emphasis on what it looks like. Those are the ones that people forget about because they're instantly tied and anchored to a moment in time. Whereas I don't care. Yes, I know Johnny Depp is older and fatter now. I know that Gore Verbinski hasn't done much lately. Not at least doing nothing, but like, you know, I know that there's a lot of things. Oh, Orlando Bloom, don't see him that much anymore, or Keira Knightley, but like you still watch it and go, it doesn't matter. This movie like stays with me. It moves forward in time with me. It is untethered to 2003. It just floats around as, I don't care what year it is. This movie is perfect. That's the best of 2001, according to me. And I'm sticking to it.
And here's a prediction. I'm going to make a prediction.
Okay.
Within the next 5 years, they will announce a Pirates of the Caribbean Disney Plus series.
Ooh.
That's my prediction.
Okay.
I don't know that it'll include Johnny Depp, but I'm imagining some sort of a Disney Plus series in the next 5 years.
Boy, okay. Interesting. You really think they'll run out of ideas?
I think they will.
Oh boy. Yeah,
we'll see.
You could be right. Yeah, we'll see. We will see.
We'll see.
All right, everybody.
Cool.
Go watch some of these movies, I guess, that I recommended. I've given you plenty of recommendations.
Yes.
Go forth, my children.
Live long and prosper.
Hey, we ended a show.
Hey.
Hooray.